Hey, everybody getting this? Come on in. Come on in. How you doing today? Everything good?
Yeah.
What's up, bro? You doing good? Thank you very much for inviting me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, it really is. I was very eye-opening. I'm just in love with Wyoming, right? Any state that has more antelope than people, I just rock it. So I started on this journey of collecting small paintings, and that's when I got a bunch of them together. I said, well, let's send them out on tour. Well, I've always been a collector of something throughout my life, whether it was baseball cards or marbles or matchbook covers. And I've always been interested in art from a very early age. I studied art since I was about 10, 11, going to the library, checking all the art books. It was just fascinating for me. And when I first got some money, I started collecting Art Nouveau because I discovered that, and I was traveling around, I could see pieces, and then I started being interested in contemporary art, and the big gap in my knowledge was contemporary art. So I started going to galleries on the west side of LA, and there was some Chicano artists showing there. So, and I immediately connected with the work, not only being a fellow Chicano, but I really connected to the work being really good painting, because I'd seen good painting all my life, and I knew what it was, and I go, wow, not only these guys are homeboys, but they're really good, you know? So I started collecting their works. These are four paintings by Jose Lozano. He's from Los Angeles. And he is just great. I mean, he has always these odd characters, and he's very attracted to lucheros, the Mexican wrestlers, masked wrestlers, and a very resonant theme in Mexican and Chicano art. But he is just intricate. I mean, you see every little faces that he's drawn over these faces and onto the frames and off, and he just enshrines these guys as the kind of demigods, you know, of the Chicano culture, and they're really meaningful, but they're very intense and fierce and in your face, but they're very cool. I mean, how can you not laugh at a guy with a mask on and tights on, you know? And so, and it's that dichotomy of fierceness and frivolity that the Chicanos are really good at capturing. Chicano art is an ongoing movement. Chicano is a dynamic term. It's constantly changing, and every generation of Mexicanos, of Mexicans across the border, start that process of becoming Chicanos. Has been going on. We're in the fourth generation of Chicano painters, just the painters. It's a dynamic process, and each generation gets to define what Chicano is for their generation, and their definition is just as valid as anything that went before it. This is by Ricardo Ruiz from Corpus Christi, Texas. Sometimes the painters themselves are very different from their paintings. You know, so I know it's been my experience that the wilder the paintings, the more shy and demure the artists are. And this is Ricardo Ruiz. He's from Corpus Christi, Texas, and he looks like an accountant. He's very shy, and his paintings are very surreal, and they're disturbing and they're dreamlike. But these are things called masotas, and he paints these every day when he comes home. And what they are, masota is short for mama sota, and big mamas. And the inspiration was his sister, who was, you know, maybe 7, 8 years older, and her friends. And they'd come home, and they were all going to Catholic school, and they would come home from school and wearing their uniforms, and they would disappear into her room, and you would hear the radio rock and roll go on, and you see smoke coming out from under the door, and laughter, and ha 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 ha. And about, you know, an hour later, they would open the door, and they were just dolled up, man. You know, they, you know, all kinds of makeup and lipstick, and their hair was in these big bouffants. And I use this for the cover of the book because it really says Chicanitas, man. And they're little, you know. That's what I want to emphasize in this collection, is that really size doesn't matter. It's what inside the frame that counts. And when they're blown up, you think they're huge paintings because they're very individual and unique brush strokes, and the attention to detail in every one of these paintings is amazing, and each one of them has a distinct, separate personality. And this one is my favorite, La Mendiga. But if you get a chance, get up close to them. Don't touch them. But I can, because I own them. And so But get up close and look at them because they're just fascinating, you know. So I subtitled this "Size Doesn't Matter," and it doesn't matter because you got to tell the story in a minute 59 or in that small confines of 12 by 12 or 16 by 12 or 8 by 4, you know. And if you can tell that story succinctly, you don't need yards and yards of canvas. You just need, and you have to do it well, and that's. I mean, I look at some of these paintings like, they're jewels, they're like Fabergé eggs, you know. These paintings are by Sonia Romero, and she's a very well-trained artist. She draws pictures of her friends and her fellow artists, and she does them in a very distinctive kind of Indian Aztec style, you know. These things here are from antiquity. Chicanos, most of the ones that I collect are either art school and or university trained. So they're exposed to world art, art history, contemporary art, and all kinds of current trends that are going now, plus their Mexican heritage and American pop, which is, they put all these three together, or 7 things together, and you get where the Chicano school comes from. And so I see it in the long historic line of art, you know, as developing as a school, is a distinct point of view, and the point of view is told from a myriad of different viewpoints, but you get the feeling of what it is to be Chicano, the sabor, the flavor, and it's not a history lesson, and it's not, the school is not defined by any particular painting style, it's defined by the viewpoint. It's an identity school. Here's the identity of Chicano people, told from a lot of different viewpoints, whether it's historical or religious or gender-based or humor-based or abstract, you know. When you put all these different viewpoints together, you get the 360 of that feeling. The piece directly behind me with the pink glittering frame is a self-portrait of a Chicana LA artist called Sandra Rodriguez. It cracks me up. Like a crazy person would put on lipstick. You know, you've seen those ladies in the street, you know, the homeless, like that. You know, she's having a good time. And I just loved it. I fell in love with that thing. To hone your artistic intuition takes a lot of work. You know, you have to see a lot of things. It's like being in training. You have to have a history of knowing what the history of art is, it's developing an eye, and developing an eye is just the same as developing a palate for wine. You know, you develop it by tasting a lot of wine. I'm known as a Chicano art advocate. I get opportunities to come to Wyoming or to go to Bordeaux, France, or anywhere around the country or the world to show Chicano art. It's like, hey man, this is cool.
This video has been made possible by the Wyoming Arts Council and the UW Art Museum Gala Funds.